And this is Sci-Fi Talk, the podcast on how sci-fi, fantasy, horror, and comics help us explore our humanity. The Mix 100 continues with number 28, Star Trek at 55, featuring interviews from those in the final frontier. Starting us off is Herbert Wright. He actually worked on Star Trek The Next Generation. I always call him the father of the Ferengi. And here he is on Gene Roddenberry.
Gene will always catch you off guard. I mean, Gene was an amazing guy. He could be extremely funny. And, he was really feeling his way through The Next Generation because he'd really not been given his opportunity. It seems ironic given his fame and his talent, but he'd never been given the opportunity in the first series to really do what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
The classic series. I mean, he was on again, off again with the network and the studio. And then with the movies after the first one, and it became its own steam engine. And while he got the scripts, it was really someone else getting to make the movies. So Next Generation was really the first opportunity for him to really put out there what he really felt that Star Trek should be all about.
There's more Sci-Fi Talk, so stay tuned. Patrick Stewart talks about Star Trek's lasting appeal.
I am astonished at the extent to which Star Trek, not just Next Generation, but the Next Generation in a very particular way, has threaded itself into popular culture in North America. And the significance that it seems to have for so many people, it doesn't diminish that I have been encountering this feeling which is deeper than affection, that is stirring in some way. I know, I mean, Bryan Singer has it, John Logan has it. You talk to them and there is a manner and an attitude when they talk about this series which goes beyond just something that they've been amused and entertained by. And I used to think I could explain it. I had theories about it. I don't care to try to analyze it. It's simply become now for me, at my age and the stage of my career, deeply gratifying to find myself a part of it, something that I never anticipated or looked for. And indeed, if it were all to end tomorrow, God forbid, this is something that I would, in a state to feel good about anything, I would feel good about it.
Here's one of the doctors on Star Trek, John Billingsley, on his doctor, Phlox.
That was one thing when I read the script. I thought, what's the doctor having these reservations for God's sake? Come on! I got 3 wives. The 4th wife isn't going to kill me.
That's right. So that'd be interesting too. I don't think we've ever had a shipboard marriage on a Star Trek show, actually, except for Tom and B'Elanna on the last show. So
what I'd really love to do is sort of along the line of Mud's women is have my wives visit, and perhaps that they could all be played by my own wife, Bonnie Friederici.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, I mean, she'd play herself at 3. Maybe all the women on my planet actually just look like Bonnie. We could clean up at the conventions. She could come as the entire species.
One of the most interesting characters that kind of spanned a few generations was John Delancey as Q.
As time has gone on, it's a character that has become so disproportionately popular to the amount of times that I've done it that there's a lot of thought and consideration put into each episode just because of that. And so this time, we went in yet another direction, and my job and the writer's job is to try to create new facets to this diamond that was created 10 years ago by Gene Roddenberry. When you do 10, you've got a lot still to go, I mean, I dare say some people in shows, over the years, they get, 50, 60, 100 shots, and they only come up with 4 or 5 facets to begin with, and leave it at that. I mean, I try to look for little areas that haven't been explored, and so do the writers. So we're always trying to go. So it gets more and more multidimensional.
Perhaps one of the unsung heroes of Star Trek was former Pocket Books editor John Ordever, who developed, along with a great stable of writers, some great Star Trek novels.
Basically, I just wanted to do something that only the books could do, and that would challenge myself and the authors. This was basically the first idea I came up with. I sat down to think of what would be really fun to do, and one thing that would be really fun would be to tie all the series together. And with Voyager in the Delta Quadrant, you start thinking about space and time stretching things, and Invasion grew out of that. I came up with the basic notion, and I called Diane Carey and asked her to flesh it out, and she wrote seed outlines for the other 3 authors, and they then wrote their own outlines based on that, and it's turned into one of the most extraordinary Star Trek productions of any kind.
Star Trek has had its ups and downs in its cinematic life. I once spoke to Alan Dean Foster about his writing the Star Trek logbooks and his treatment for Star Trek the Motion Picture.
You also did novelizations for the Star Trek animated series, if I recall, and I have probably credit you as one of the people that when there wasn't anything new on Star Trek, because of these novelizations, this is all we had to read or to see. So it's very important in sort of keeping the faith on that. And then you actually wrote the treatment for Star Trek the Motion Picture. How did that come about? And
I also did 7 Star Trek scripts for Talking Records.
Oh,
there's a company called Power Records that issued 2 Star Trek records. And there were 3 or 4 stories on each one of them, original scripts with sound effects and real Star Trek, but no names were given. They didn't credit names for many years.
I think I had one of those.
Okay, and I'm very proud of those little scripts. They were written a long time ago, but they're Star Trek scripts. They may be only 15 minutes long a piece, but they are Star Trek nonetheless. The novelizations of the animated series came about because Ballantine Books bought the rights to do book versions of them. I had already done a couple of novelizations for them, a terrible film called Luana and a much better film called Dark Star, and the assignment was given to me. And the treatment for the Star Trek movie came about because Gene Roddenberry had seen the Star Trek logs.
Oh, there you go.
Interestingly enough, and liked them and was familiar, figured that I knew the Star Trek universe and could work in it. And I was brought in along with a lot of other writers to submit ideas for a proposed revival of the TV series, and instead they decided to do a movie, and my story was picked, and that's how that came about. After, as many people have probably already read in numerous histories of Star Trek, after the project became a big budget film, I, having no pull whatsoever in Hollywood, became an instant non-person, and it was a very unhappy experience for me. But the first 5 minutes of the movie is all mine, and after that they changed everything around, and I was not asked to contribute, so I can take neither credit nor damnation for whatever follows after the first 5 minutes.
To your credit, what you told me earlier was that you'd just been given essentially a 1-page or a 2-page outline for a story idea, and essentially the rest is all Alan Dean Foster. Do you think we would ever see a version of that anywhere in print someday?
My treatment was titled In Thy Image, and I would have no objection to having somebody reprint it. I mean, at this point, it wouldn't be for any sort of obscure literary value. It would be practically a historical document. But that would be something that would have to be discussed with the powers that be at Paramount. Of course, there were many things different at the time. Leonard Nimoy had not signed on for the film, so there was a half-human, half-Vulcan character, more or less, to take his place, much younger, named Zahn. And there were a number of other things that had to be different that were changed radically for many reasons. But if somebody wanted to see it reprinted in a Star Trek fanzine or a book or something like that, I certainly have no objections to it. It's an old piece of work, but it would probably be a lot of fun for people to see, but that's entirely up to Paramount.
One of the things the Next Generation did very well was develop the Klingons. And here's Michael Dorn.
One of the things that I actually did when I got the job was that I vowed to change the perception of Klingons, and although we didn't have major discussions about it, Gene allowed me to create the Worf character any way I wanted to. And so what I did was I took we had to do a different voice, number one, because the voice was too human-like, originally, although deep. And so I just took it and made it English. Made him really eloquent, instead of saying, we can't, I say we cannot, and make it very stilted and very eloquent. So, and also the same with the fighting sequences. Originally it was like screaming and yelling and hitting with 2 hands and, just really kind of wild stuff. And I went to one of the special effects supervisors on our show who was a martial arts expert. I said, look, I want to change this all around. Let's do something that is violent, but almost like martial arts like, so every move is choreographed, and it is every, if you make a move, you're getting prepared for the next move, and so it looks real, like a dance, except they can rip your throat out, or something. And so that was my whole point, is to change the Klingons so they weren't just, these wild guys, and made them a little different.
I also know that Discovery is going to be doing that as well, with a caste system. Should be interesting. Here's some interesting interviews where Star Trek actors are really talking about something where you get to know a little bit more of who they were as people. First, we start off with Leonard Nimoy, as at one time he founded a theater company and was actively involved in theater early in his career and even during Star Trek.
I was teaching acting classes in a studio on I think it was on El Centro, right in the middle of Hollywood, just off of Melrose, near Melrose and Vine Street. Some of the students were interested in starting an acting company, a theater company. And one day they came to me and they said, we think we have found a building that might be right for us. Would you come and take a look at it with us? It was only about 2 blocks away, so we walked over to this building on, I think it was at the corner of Waring and Vine Street. It looked like it could work, and I laid out the design for the way the seating on the stage should be laid out in the building. And we began working on creating a theater.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And we went into rehearsal for a very long period I was looking for a play for them that I would direct. I was looking for a play that would put to work as many of their actors as possible so we could have a lot of roles for a lot of people. There was a play by Tennessee Williams that we chose called Camino Real. Very large canvas play, a lot of people, a lot of scenes. And I was intrigued with it, and I thought it might be fun to do. We did the casting, and went into a very difficult period because we were rehearsing in a theater that was being built.
Yeah.
So physically it was very difficult, and after a long period of building problems, we're getting building permits and electrical permits and plumbing permits and one thing and another, and working on minimal dollars and rehearsing at the same time. It got to be very complicated. At least while I was around, and this was after months of work on this project, we never did get the play open, but we had put a bunch of actors through their paces pretty good. And eventually they got the theater open, and they've managed to remain a company all this time, and I give them a lot of credit for it.
Yeah, that's great. And so many people, not only yourself and Robert, but Richard Chamberlain and Vic Morrow have all literally flexed their acting muscles there.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
And the stage is so important. I firmly believe that for actors.
Yeah. I think, if I remember, Vic Morrow directed a wonderful production of La Ronde.
Oh, nice.
For them. It was a beautiful production, yeah.
And so you got asked to come back, and what's it going to feel like for you to be back there and to see it?
It's great. I'm really impressed with what they've been doing. They are very focused on working on new and very relevant material having to do with ethnic issues. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a real good niche, an important niche that they have chosen for themselves to deal with issues that are so relevant to so many people who are, at least as far as I can see, underrepresented in the theater.
Yeah.
So they're airing some ideas and exploring some ideas that I think are very important.
More of the Mix 100 on Sci-Fi Talk, so stay tuned. Now, James Doohan actually served during World War II and was actually in Normandy during the invasion. And he talks about those World War II experiences.
Very excited about my war experiences. I had experiences that I don't think anybody else could ever possibly have. It's like my experience with B-17s. Mm-hmm. Did you read the...
Yeah, I did read that part about B-17.
I tell you, you get into a tiger moth and you climb to 10,000 feet, which takes an hour and a half. Tiger moth, there's no power there. And you break through a cloud, and there's 36 B-17s coming right at you 180 degrees that way. And, man, I tell you, it's only seconds. But pretty soon I'm laughing and smiling, and I'm looking up at belly gunners and down at top gunners and everything else, and all the side gunners that they have and everything else, and I feel, oh wow, hey, I got through, all in about 4 or 5 seconds, and they're probably saying to me, look at that bloody limey. Everything else, how could he be so stupid as to do this? And I had 20 hours of flying at the time. No experience at all, and then I hit the prop wash.
That's right, you're talking about the prop wash.
I lost about 3,000 or 4,000 feet. And I had asked my instructor, what should I do on the way home? He says, why don't you climb up to 10,000 feet and then do aerobatics and everything else, all the way, fly to Cambridge. And I thought I was over Cambridge, or pretty close anyway. There I did it. And on the way home after that prop wash thing, that's 36 times 4 engines up there in that area spouting out wind. Which is not too good for a little tiger moth. So anyway, when I got down to about 5,000 feet, I said to myself, the hell with the aerobatics, I'm going home.
I think that would have qualified as the aerobatics anyway.
Oh yeah, well, don't worry. I'm telling you. But of course the tiger moth was built to recover itself. But I must say that I succeeded in recovering it just by giving hard ops at rudder, most of the things. But the flying was, oh God, I did things flying that no sane person would probably ever think of doing. I mean, I can remember after a victory in Europe, I had to go into Germany a lot, mostly to deliver mail. Or sometimes a full medical colonel, I would fly to Detmold, and that poor man had no idea what was going on. He says, do you know where you're going? I knew the trip and the tour and all that sort of stuff. And he said to me, he was nervous as hell. Probably had never been on a small plane in his life anyway, but he was nervous. And a full colonel, red stripes on his epaulets, and we were going into Detmold, and I said, yes sir. I said, well, I tell you what, I said, here, why don't you look at the map? I said, I got to fly the airplane. We were only at about 500 feet. Anyway, he says, I can't read anything. He said, well, what's that town over there? Little town, nothing. 16 buildings or something like that. And I said, oh, that's Ogun Smoggin. I made up a name, And he says, oh, well, he looks for Ogun Smoggin on the map and everything else. And then I said, well, I tell you what, sir. I said, I don't want to worry you anymore. I said, but very soon we're going to be coming to the Autobahn. I said, and as a matter of fact, while I was talking to him about it, I said, there it is right there, and it runs that way, and Detmold is up there. We'll just follow the Autobahn up to Detmold, and it'll be no problem at all. Oh, he just sighed and said, oh, God. He had no idea where he was, and didn't trust me one little bit.
Those last two samples and the entire interviews are available on my feed, are special to me because we lost both of those actors. Brent Spiner played a very interesting character in Lieutenant Commander Data. And as with Star Trek, there's makeup involved.
It stayed exactly the same, but the only difference, the worst part of the makeup has always been the contact lenses, always. The makeup adds to that difficulty because it gets in my eyes and smears over the lenses, and by the middle of the day I can't see anything anymore. The lenses are prescription lenses, but they're not my prescription, so it makes things very difficult. In this film I had a particularly difficult time with the lenses. I don't know why. I'm one of these people who I'm lucky in that at my advanced age I can still read without glasses. I do need them for distance, but I don't to read. I was finding myself in the morning really having a hard time reading, and I knew it was only in the morning. By the end of the day I could read fine. And so I went to an ophthalmologist. He said what's happened and it happened on this film, was that my corneas, which you're supposed to be smooth, were wavy. And so I said to him, well, would you be willing to testify to that in court? And no, I'm kidding. I didn't really. But He said it will take about a year for them to smooth out again, and they will repair themselves. But that's the hardest part, is the contacts.
Star Trek had a couple of shapeshifters, but easily my favorite is Rene Auberjonois, who was Odo.
It's like playing any other character, except that at a certain point you melt and you become jello and you run all over the place, and then you become something else. And when I become something else, it's obviously not really me. It's done with like special effects, and so that like one show I had to turn into a rat, and so I didn't have to come into work the day the rat worked. And but when I came in the next day, everybody said, "Oh, you were great yesterday. You did really well." But actually, all they were doing were filming the rat running around. So it's really not that different from playing any character. You just he becomes very real to me, and so I don't even think about it. I do a different voice for Odo, but I don't do that voice. Like right now, I'm not talking in that voice. I don't know if you know Odo has a sort of a gruff voice like that, but I find it difficult to do his voice when I'm not in my makeup.
I think Ethan Phillips really made Neelix his own in Star Trek Voyager.
Yeah, the only thing we really have in common, Neelix and I, is our left elbow and part of my lower colon. Other than that, we are totally different. No, everything you see is put in digitally by the computer people. I do nothing. The writers write, and then I, as an actor, try to make it alive. So all the stuff you see is besides the words is me, I hope, and if I go off the track, the director steers me back on, Sometimes I tend to be, my background's in farce and Moliere and Feydeau, and I tend to be way big, so they're always bringing me back. But I always say it's easier to bring you back than ask you to do more. So
it's a wonderful thing that you're doing for people who don't look as godlike as many of the TV characters. Although out of makeup, you're devastatingly handsome. As Neelix, you're slightly challenged, but still you've got the best-looking babe on the show.
I'm very lucky to finally, after 25 years of acting, to get the babe. Unfortunately, I'm wearing 4 pounds of rubber, but nevertheless, I do have the babe. But I think very few people know that Neelix was a swimsuit model on his planet, and that's the uncommon knowledge.
Marina Sirtis reminds us how hard it was for Next Generation at the very beginning.
Because of the way DS9 and Voyager were greeted by the press and the media and the fans, they seem to think that's what happened when we started, and they have forgotten that when we started, people were actually saying, "How dare you? How dare you even think of putting another Star Trek on? We love what we have. We don't want anything new. And who is this British bald guy wanting to be a captain?" Fortunately, my character didn't have an equivalent in the first show, so I was let off pretty easily, apart from I think it was Rolling Stone who said I came from Long Island, which actually I was actually quite pleased about, because I didn't think I could do an American accent at the time. But we really had to win the audience, and that basically, I think, happened in around about the third season when the show really took off. But no, we had to really scramble, and we weren't accepted with open arms like the two new shows kind of were.
I remember speaking to Linda Park just before the premiere of Enterprise, which eventually became Star Trek Enterprise.
That's really cool. It's very techno, actiony, kind of edgy, an edgier quality than Star Trek has had before.
Yeah.
Those are fun to see, to kind of, because we're so inside our work.
Sure.
To kind of be able to step back and see what, the excitement that an audience may feel, because we've been in it for a while now and so consumed by it. And the technicalities. But seeing the trailers, it goes back to the initial, excitement and joy of the show, of this new prospect we're all going into. Prequel to the Star Trek legacy. It really is overwhelming, especially when we watch the trailers, just to see ourselves really as the characters. In that kind of format, and see what the audience is probably a case of what the audience.
Sure, for what the audience is going to see. Jonathan Frakes made a point years ago talking about the audition process for Next Generation, saying there was like 7 auditions.
Right.
How was it for you for Enterprise?
It was a pretty long process. It was a long process in which I didn't go in, repeatedly for a lot of times, but they spent a lot of time looking for girls. And the first time they had seen me, the first group, I was, from what I had heard from my agent, is I was the, one of the few that they liked. And so they wanted to get more perspective. So that's why it took longer, because they kept wanting to audition more to see if they could get more possibilities for the character. But then it turned out by the end of the process that even in the end I was the only one that ended up testing for the part.
Oh, great.
Yes. It's good in one sense that they didn't, there wasn't anybody else they liked for the part besides me, but the negative side of that is if I didn't get the part, then it wouldn't be, so-and-so was just more right for it.
Yeah.
Because there was no other girl. It would have just been, I guess they didn't like me, It was a long process, but knowing that that the producers did like me that much gave me a lot more confidence in the room, when I would go back, to know that they were on my side, that they weren't out to, find my flaws or see me do badly. They wanted to see me do well.
I got a chance a few years ago to speak to Doug Jones, who was playing an android in Space Command, and he talks about some of his robotic parts and also his career.
Is that first of all, I got to play an android. I'd never played an android character before.
Yeah.
Been lots of other worldly creatures before, but never a mechanical one of this nature. Now, I did do a couple of funny robots. I was the robot, my name is number 7, in The Benchwarmers. And I was that was on wheels and kind of like completely, in a hard shell, operating a robot and using my voice. And also with, I played a character called Gay Robot in Nick Swardson's Pretend Time. That's a very funny comedian. He developed that character in his stand-up act, and then took it to television on Comedy Central. Bless his heart. It was just the most filthy thing I've ever played. But this, being an android who, it looks more humanish and uses my actual face, was kind of like, let's try that.
Yeah. Well, one of the people you get to work with is actor who I love, Robert Picardo, and
he is so good.
Have you guys ever met? You must have met in your circles, or no?
We have.
No? Oh, okay.
We have met before. We've actually been credited alongside each other in other films before. Once the working title was End of the Road, and I think it might be called 1, 2, 3 Scream now.
Okay.
Which is an unfortunate title. I kind of liked End of the Road better.
Yeah.
And we also we met many years ago on an episode of The Outer Limits.
Oh, right.
In the late 90s, filming up in Vancouver, I played an alien from outer space, and he was on another planet, and he was on an excavation team that found me in sort of a sarcophagus underground.
Oh, cool.
And I slowly came to life while sucking the life out of one of his team members. As you do,
That happens sometimes, yeah.
Right. So that's when we first met, was back then in the late 90s, and then in the other movie along the way, and then I'm trying to think. We did a silly sci-fi movie called Rock Jocks with Felicia Day.
Oh, yeah.
More recently, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I love Felicia. She's a doll.
Oh, isn't Felicia just delightful?
Yeah, she is. She really is.
Right. Just turn on your webcam and talk to us. We're all happy.
That's right. That's right. That would make my day, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
This way you kind of get to know a little bit of who Doug Jones was and what he's done, in case you don't know. And shame on you if you don't. Here is Jonathan Frakes, first officer in Next Gen, on the show's fans.
I'm in downtown Omaha at the Holiday Inn, getting in a cab to go to the convention center to do my little spiel at the convention. I pull up to a stoplight, and up next to me pulls a Ford Taurus with a Klingon driving and a Borg in the next seat. And you think, did these guys just, go into their bathrooms and glue that rubber turtle on their head, and now they're driving to the convention and they're going to see me? What does that mean?
And lastly, Patrick Stewart's going to take us home.
There are times when you're shooting a drama series, you do wonder, is anybody paying attention to this? You think, 2 o'clock on a Saturday morning at the end of a long week, you wonder, does this all amount to anything at all? it has been especially delightful, particularly within our own profession, when you find, I don't know if you're aware, but Tom Hanks is a big Next Generation fan. I mean, Tom knows the names of the episodes. I mean, it's that significant to him. To find that Secretary Albright is a big fan of Next Generation. And that seems very appropriate, too, when you consider that woman and what she has done and what her beliefs are. Vice chancellors of universities, an ex-chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, people in all walks of life they feel something about it that I can no longer properly analyze. I can just see it in their faces and in their manner, and it's very, very gratifying.
Sonequa Martin-Green had an interesting relationship in Season 2 of Star Trek Discovery with Ash Tyler.
That was a unique experience for Burnham. I had never been in love before as Michael Burnham. That was a first love situation. A very new thing, to go to a loving relationship from the sort of upbringing that I had. And yes, this concept of love, I'm still learning about and still understanding, especially because the self-love is something I'm still trying to learn. And Burnham actually may not even be completely conscious, may not even be completely aware of that self-love and what's and how hard it really is to do it, and that is the key. I'm just saying, I just know it's Sonequa, that's what needs to happen.
Star Trek Discovery's new aliens are the Kelpians. As I examine Saru, who has unique movements and gestures that certainly make him more alien, Doug Jones told me about creating that part of Saru.
Yeah, the challenge for me after 32 years of playing aliens and monsters and fantasy creatures is how do you make this one different than the others? So many things inform that. He's among the smartest characters I've ever played. He also was a prey species on his home planet. I feel like he's kind of like posturing himself to fit in and to be the very, very best. He wants to represent his people well. So he has the behavior of a very refined butler, like, you know what I mean? So with that came a posture and a gesturing that was very prim and proper, I believe. But the shoes, those boots, those hideous boots that are painful but gorgeous to look at, that create my hoof feet, that informed my posture even more so, with where my hips are placed, how my arms flow when I walk, and how I stand when I'm standing still. Thank heaven for Gersha Phillips and designing those boots, because it's like that's something I've not done before. That started from the ground up.
The Mix 100 is one of the many special programs available where you, the listener, can determine the list by your downloads. It's on Sci-Fi Talk Plus, and it's a great gift not only for you, but also for your friends and family. 900 episodes, commercial-free, uncut, and special programs like the Mix 100 and Rewind. The best part? Right now, it's free. Click on the link in the show notes for free lifetime access. This is Tony Tellado.